And welcome to another session with us at Aucademy. I am Dr. Chloe Farahar. I am a white person with a shaved head, giant glasses, and I'm wearing absolutely huge black sort of teddy hood from Huge Hoods. They are ridiculous. I can't even explain how big this hood is. And I'm very excited because I'm joined today by Nathan McConnell. Have I said that right? Probably not. Okay, good. And the reason I'm excited, and I forgot to say this before we came on for the live, is that you're one of the first advocates I found when I discovered I was autistic back in sort of 2016. And when I used to try and support people to say, here's some good resources or good safe advocates to go and have a look at, your artwork was one of those suggestions. Just to fangirl a bit over here. My pronouns are they, she as well, I forgot to mention. Nathan, would you mind doing a physical description for people?
Sure, I'm Nathan McConnell, creator of Growing Up Autie, a comic about growing up autistic in a neurotypical world. I am a vaguely Irish-looking white male with a Irish cap and Coke bottle glasses reminiscent of Buddy Holly. I'm wearing a black shirt with my Stuck in the Uncanny Valley logo on it for my upcoming project.
Fantastic. And we're definitely going to be talking about that because today's topic is the Uncanny Valley. If you haven't heard of this theory, this idea, I've heard about it last year, I think, and it really struck me, but I don't know enough about it. So I'm really pleased. And I was like, I'm going to do this particular session because I'm really interested in this one. So Nathan, you're going to hopefully help us understand what this is and how it relates specifically to being autistic, or how it very easily can relate to being autistic. Right. As usual, we like to start our sessions by asking our guests who they are and what is or are your dedicated interests? So who are you, Nathan?
So I am Nathan McConnell. As I said, I'm the creator of Growing Up Autie. It's a comic I've been doing for 8 or 9 years now, where I do comics, write-ups. I've done a little bit of music. I've done animated shorts and things like that. So my dedicated interests are video games, K-pop from like when I was younger, much younger, and a lot of different stuff. Cooking. I used to be into languages a whole lot. Martial arts, skateboarding. Some of that stuff has stopped. Some of it has kept on, but it changes. Sometimes I find something very interesting. I'm really into miniatures, but from far away. Like I have not made one. I have not bought one, but when I see them in the store, I'm like, ooh, I kind of like the idea of that. So
miniatures, as in?
So, my mother-in-law works at a store and they sell hobbies, basically. And so, you know how they have miniature cars? Well, they actually have miniature living room sets, miniature houses. I saw one that was a flat that was like 2 stories and it had lighting. And I guess it's kind of the concept of just like being small and safe in there or something. But it's very cool. I just haven't haven't like gotten into it, but I like watching little videos about it.
Oh, nice. Well, that's the thing. Like, yeah, so you just say you like watch videos about it and things as well. So that's still getting immersed in an interest, right, isn't it? Yeah, right. Fantastic. And our key question that we like to ask our guests is, when did you discover you were autistic?
So it's really funny. So when I was younger, my family was convinced that there were, things that didn't quite add up. I ended up being diagnosed with ADHD very early on as a kid, probably when I was like 6 or 7. But even further on, it was when I think I was like a preteen, maybe a teenager, that we went a little bit further, excuse me, and found that I was autistic. Of course, they called it Asperger's back then. But I, was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. Both the ADHD and the autism diagnosis weren't really forefront. And I feel like that was sort of, unfortunate in the sense that I didn't have that reality, that understanding of myself back then. But I had to get re-diagnosed as an adult to basically get help from a government agency to find me a job. And so I was actually diagnosed twice. I was diagnosed as a teen, and I was diagnosed as an adult again, which was a lot harder because once you learn to mask, they just don't believe you anymore. But yeah, it took a while to get that second diagnosis. But once the guy realized that I was right and telling the truth, he was just kind of blown away.
Okay, 2 things. I'm going to come back to the blown away comment, so I'm going to make a note before I forget it. And I do hear about that sometimes, but I do find that odd, the idea that you had to get a second diagnosis, because to be autistic is to be born and develop in an autistic way. Mm-hmm. So was it the nature of, like, say, how to get help? They didn't believe that original diagnosis, or maybe that diagnosis was wrong, or
so it was more along the lines of, we had a wonderful thing here in the States where you're allowed to ask for your information at any time, but they only have to keep it for 7 years or something like that. I can't recall. So I did not have the original diagnosis. So when I went to go get help, they basically said, well, you don't have the diagnosis and we can't take your word for it. So we're just going to send you to go do this again, basically.
Oh, okay. And so was it your parents that got the diagnosis for you, and then they didn't necessarily have a copy of it?
Right.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. I don't know if that's a thing in the UK, that you wouldn't have the diagnosis on record anymore. Oh, I don't know. And for your second diagnosis, you said that the assessor was blown away once he really believed you
he
as
was.
An autistic person.
It's so wild, that whole memory. But let's put it this way: I had lost my job, the one job that I had gotten, that I had really excelled in. And I went from a part-time 2 days a week to a manager over 50 stores in Houston within a month. And then within a few months of having that job and doing really well in it, we lost the contract and I was out of the position. And just a whole bunch of really bad stuff was going on in my life, to the point to where I was suggested to go there. Hey, go there, they'll help you out. And when I went there, it was like, we can't, you know what I mean? Like, we don't believe that. I don't know. We're going to get you an assessment. I'm like, okay, that's fine. And so many things were going on. I hadn't slept in 2 days when I went to the assessment. I hadn't eaten in probably 3 meals. I was extremely agitated. I was in autistic burnout and didn't know it. I had completely forgotten that I was autistic for years before that. And I went in there and I basically was acing IQ test things that I'd never done before. And he was like, oh, you've done this before. And he would just end each of the little things. You know this stuff, and I'm like, no, I don't remember doing this, like, ever. And he was kind of annoyed because I guess I wasn't being like that mean, but I wasn't super happy. I was agitated. I was frustrated at the world treating me the way that it did. And now I'm jumping through more hoops to get the help that I need to fix the problem that they're causing. And at some point he said, man, why are you so mad? And I kind of explained. I said, look, being who I am this entire time has been extremely frustrating, an uphill battle. Nobody likes you. Nobody wants to hire you. Nobody wants to talk to you. And over time, he went from, oh, you're just trying to get a diagnosis, you know what I mean, to, you're telling the truth, aren't you? And I was like, yes. He was like, okay, so the IQ test stuff, you've never done this. I was like, no, I had one when I was a kid, And so we came to a realization together, kind of like, that I'm telling the truth. Even I was like, oh yeah, I guess I am. And he was just like, the world is wasting you, the knowledge that you have, the ideas that you have. He was like, it's wasting you. We need to, he's like, I'm going to put this on paper. You need to go back there. They need to get you a job. Unfortunately, that did not end in a job. They had an entire year. They used, I think, 6 or 7 different placement firms that specialized in autistic job placement. And what that literally meant was, despite having a degree in multimedia, despite having portfolio work and all of the knowledge I needed to do the job, they wanted to get me a job as a sacker. They wanted to get me a job as a cashier or something in those lines. And I kept trying to explain to them.
Is a sacker where you pack people's shopping?
Yes. They wanted me to either stock groceries, put them in bags, or check them out at the cashier. And I was like, well, hold on a sec. Like, that's perfectly fine for somebody who's looking for a job like that. But like, what about career-driven autistics who are trying to get a career in their chosen field that they have a degree in? And especially since starting my comic, you hear about people, oh, I have a master's degree in this very hireable field, and these people are without jobs. And so, yeah, they spent a whole year trying. But everyone they sent me to, it was, hey, why don't you go ahead and go home and apply for jobs online? And I'm like, that's what I've been doing. That's why I'm here. It doesn't work, So, but yeah, it was an interesting moment, a life-changing moment, and the fact that I happened upon a knowledgeable person who was willing to listen to my experiences and actually give me the diagnosis again was extremely helpful. So yeah, it was a wild ride, I'll say.
Thank you. And yeah, I find it interesting, and we have all sorts of different people from different backgrounds and things. So it's always interesting also to hear how different it might be in the States compared to the UK, for instance,
Right.
And things. So yeah, and I think that is an issue, that there is that stereotype about what it means to be autistic. And so when you hear about initiatives that are supposed to be helping people get work as an autistic person, it doesn't take into account what the autistic person actually wants to do.
Right.
And we don't need to discuss anything further than that. Then, you know, we don't have to make assumptions about whether they've got a learning disability or not,
Right.
and so on. It's just enough to know, what is that person saying that they're skilled at? What are they saying that they would like support to be able to do? Yeah, we don't see that. It's that sort of assumption that they can only do a certain job. Like you say, those jobs might be fine for some people, and enjoyable.
Right. There's nothing wrong with those jobs, you know, in general.
Yeah.
Had I been younger, had I been in my teenage years, I would have jumped for those jobs. I've applied for those jobs, you know, but once I have a degree and all those things, it's sort of like, why are you still trying to put me in there, you know?
Yeah. Okay. So moving on to, you are currently working on a project. So I would like to, if you can, tell us about this project.
I am indeed. So my comic is based on my life, and all of the animations, all of the comics, all of the write-ups are based on my experiences as an autistic person growing up, hence the name, Growing Up Autie. This particular project has been in my brain since I made that first comic about the Uncanny Valley several years ago, probably 5, 6 or more years ago. When I was a young kid, I'm hearing all these things about how I'm weird, how I'm different. I had a bully tell me, I hate you and I don't know why. And it just, these weird, you know, you're not human, you're a robot. Everyone would say, you're robotic. You seem fake. You seem like an alien. All of these things got stuck in my head. And sometimes when I got really overwhelmed, I would go to my grandmother's house, Dadaw, and she would let me, you know, eat junk food, drink sodas, and watch TV. And so one night, it was probably, you know, 8, 9 p.m. They're showing a little bit more like sci-fi-y documentaries and things like that. And that was one of my big things back then. So I saw one called the Uncanny Valley. And I thought to myself, oh, that seems, you know, that's a cool sounding, you know, phrase. And I started watching it and very quickly got kind of freaked out because I'm like, this sounds like my life, you know. So we actually have, I don't know if we want to do the teasers first, but we actually have 2 teasers from this project, and then we'll kind of go into that further.
Fantastic. And in a second, Nathan, can you just give me a thumbs up? You can hear the sound okay when I play this.
Sure. Yep.
No, we don't want that. Do you want to speak to the teaser? Because that was a real teaser. There was.
I think we can go to the other one. Yeah, the teaser just kind of gives you the vibe and the feel of the short film.
I know, I'm liking the kind of, it's a bit Stranger Things. I'm hoping that's not an insult to say.
No, not at all. No.
Right, let's pop the other one up. You can tell I don't always do the tech. Fantastic. I want to get stuck into this. But also, just for people to be aware, we'll pop the links as well they'll be in the description for this session so that you can go and find the GoFundMe, for instance. And I'm like, Nathan, do you need anyone to come and I don't know how you're doing the project, you're going to tell me, but if you need anyone, because I find this fascinating. So I've showed the trailers. Basically, the main question, what is the Uncanny Valley? So I know you had it briefly in that trailer there, but yeah, explain the Uncanny Valley.
So the Uncanny Valley started out, there was a roboticist who he would make these robots, and they were not very human-like at all. And people had no real connection to them. They had no feeling towards them. The robots had a job, and they did the job. He started adding sort of more human-like features to them. And the more he did that, the more likable the robots became up to a point. And so you see that curve kind of go up for a little bit. And it's sort of like, little cutesy doll or little cutesy robot where it's different enough that it's acceptable, But when he got to the point to where they were too human, but different enough, it fell into this little curve and people were like, oh, absolutely not. I hate this thing. I'm disgusted by this thing. Get it away from me. And then, of course, once it becomes human enough, you get kind of back up that curve to, to that real person vibe. And so when you have neurotypical people or non-autistic or honestly non-neurodiverse people just in general, they are on the other end. They're on the perfect human side, quote unquote, perfect human side. They meet the expectations socially. They meet them physically. They meet them with body language. They meet them with facial expressions and voice intonation and things like that. They're fine. They accept each other. They see each other as the same. But when you have someone like us, someone who's neurodiverse, someone who's autistic, someone whose mannerisms are different, if they are different enough, it's okay. You see someone having a speech impediment. You see someone who uses certain devices or moves very, very, very differently. They're like, oh, bless their heart, things like that. They're like, oh, they're different and that's acceptable because I'm a good person. But when they get to a point where they start masking, that's when you have a problem, because we start pushing into that uncanny valley. The more that we try to act neurotypical, the more we get pushed in there. And unless you can do it perfectly, you end up stuck there. And that's where a lot of us, end up. A lot of my experiences growing up were basically that, stay away from me. I don't like you. Ooh. I did a comic about this, but when I was in kindergarten, it was sort of like everybody into the fort. And then I was the last one to go in, and they were like, but not you. You're weird. You're different. And even back then, I didn't know what that meant. But in his original thought process on the Uncanny Valley, his only thoughts were human-like appearance. So at first, that curve was just for appearance. And then it became mannerisms. And then it became things like voice intonation. And then it became things that were like social understandings. We have things now where someone folds their arms, the other person's supposed to do it, to make the person feel comfortable. Well, they also noticed over time, it wasn't just his research, but other people who have researched it, that the Uncanny Valley thing happens for a lot of different stuff. It's not just human appearance. We look human. We are human. But when we start acting differently, if you see a very convincing robot and then it starts moving, but it's jittery, that makes people super uncomfortable. So basically that's the gist of the Uncanny Valley. That's kind of where it started and kind of where it's at now.
Okay, and I want to get into this a bit more, but I want to understand a bit better about the project specifically in relation to this. So how are you building a project around this?
This particular project, I've been wanting to do for a long time, but basically the idea is to show my realization that I, an autistic person, felt the same as these robots, these these AIs, even it went into CG at one point in the video I was watching as a kid. As a kid, as an autistic child, you see these episodes of shows where the child finds out they're an alien, or the person finds out they're a robot, and I completely personified myself with that. I was connected to that because I'm like, that explains it. I'm this alien, or I'm this robot. I'm not from Earth. And then I see that short film, and it got my mind just racing. Like, those are my experiences. What if I am that? What if I am these things? But the short film is basically going to explain the Uncanny Valley. It's going to connect the Uncanny Valley to the autistic experience. It's going to show my experience in various different things that have happened that, in my opinion, can't be explained any other way than what this roboticist was talking about. It's going to be, I'm still working on a couple things on it, so it's mostly going to be animated. I've done a couple animated shorts before. It's going to be voiced over. It's going to be very similar to like a TED Talk, but more of a, animated short kind of thing. Depending on the funding, I'm not sure how long it's going to be, but I definitely want to get all of, the concepts in enough to convince everybody, autistic and not, this is something that's happening, and this is something that we really need to talk about and focus on. Because this is affecting everyone's higher ability. It's affecting their ability to safely go places. I spent several summers before I started masking completely, where I would get pulled over by police every 2 or 3 days, literally telling me that I'm acting suspicious or that I'm raising red flags. And half of them were terrified. I couldn't understand it. So this project, this is sort of like, is probably the most important thing for me right now, is this. It's, in my opinion, most of my comics that have been about the struggles that I experience as an autistic person come from this Uncanny Valley experience. And the fact that people have this fear, this I guess you could say, primordial fear, this leftover fear from before. And it's very funny. You see these memes and things like that joke about the Uncanny Valley, or they make up stuff about the Uncanny Valley. I saw one that said, the Uncanny Valley existing lets us know that at one time there was something that looked human but wasn't, and they were out to get us, and that's why we were fearful. And I'm like, thanks. Like, super not helpful, man, but thank you.
Some scary narratives based on that. Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm just going to flag for people as well. I'm just going to make a banner. It's quite long in terms of the banner for that YouTube. That YouTube? I was 39 recently. It's fine. I can sound old. It's fine. But I'm assuming if they just look for Nathan McConnell with 2 C's, 2 N's, and 2 L's, that they'll find you easily enough. Do we think on YouTube?
Possibly. I would probably go with Growing Up Autie.
Okay, Growing Up Autie.
I don't know if I sent y'all the link to my channel, but if they go to either of those 2 links that you have in the chat, that will take them to my profile. If they click on that.
Fantastic. I might actually just grab that. Ben, would you mind grabbing that for me before I collapse every single tab that I have open? I don't have loads of tabs open. It's fine. And what's really interesting about this is, because when was this? When you said you were quite young when you saw this, like, documentary or special or whatever it might have been?
I would think I was in middle school, and I had a very interesting middle school experience. I was in a majority Black neighborhood. It was a magnet school. But I was different to everybody. So it wasn't just the fact that I was white there. I also had glasses. I also had random curly hair. I was the #1 bullied kid in school for a while. And so when I went home and, went to my grandmother's house and saw this documentary, I think it was kind of like lightning in a bottle. It just sort of everything conspiring at once. And then I find this and I'm like, this makes too much sense.
And I know you said middle school. When are we talking? Are we talking? I haven't asked how old you are. When are we?
So I think I'm 38.
Okay.
I think so, until June. So it was a while back. Let's see, I graduated in 2003, so 4 years before that, and then maybe a year or two before.
We're talking
that.
like the 90s, probably.
Yeah, it was definitely in the 90s.
And the reason I'm asking is because that is interesting. So I just found your channel, I think. I'm going to tag that in a second. Because, we're talking like the 90s, the Uncanny Valley. You found that particular thing interesting. And then we ended up with some research recently. I mean, one of the recent research pieces was like 2017. But neurotypical peers being less likely to, or less willing to interact with those with autism. Apologies for the title of the piece, based on thin sliced judgments. So this idea that non-autistic people make very, very quick judgments based on very little information when they meet an autistic person and don't necessarily know that person's autistic.
100%.
So the Uncanny Valley might be there.
And that's one of the immediate researches that I found once I started looking into this project again, because I've had it on the back burner. But for the longest time, it was just my experiences, my knowledge of what the Uncanny Valley was. Seeing that documentary when I was a kid, it was a very siloed experience. It was like, this is my theory. I believe this because of these reasons. But the moment that I stepped out of my door to find proof of this or to find science behind this, I found several articles like that. That was one of them. There was another one that ironically says that autistic children do not experience the Uncanny Valley effect.
In the sense, we don't have this negative feeling when somebody isn't the same as us, but they're just getting close enough to being the same as us.
Yes.
Any theories around that? Is it that we just don't make those judgments?
So, they phrased it like a deficit, and I thought that was really funny. Of course they did. It was their research.
And I'm just thinking, there's that study that shows we're more likely to give as well, and apparently that's a deficit. More likely, to give rewards. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. So on that one, I read it. I listened to it a little bit, and I just thought to myself, well, yeah. I mean, if you watched a show as a kid as an autistic that had mannequins coming alive and reaching for you, of course you're going to be scared of that, right? Because it's a mannequin coming to get you. But I couldn't think of any specific incident where I saw something that should have invoked that Uncanny Valley response that I felt that way. If anything, I felt camaraderie. You know what I mean? I was like, hey, that guy moves, that robot moves like me, or, you know what I mean? He, has the same cadence as me. But what was really funny is they did the research, they phrased it as if there was something wrong with us. And then they said, but this opens the door to robotic assistance for autism treatments. There's one out, I don't remember, it's not Meebo, but there's some kind of weird, a toy robot that teaches them facial expressions and eye contact and things like that. And it's like, oh, okay, sure. But yeah, the moment that I started doing the research, the moment that I was like, oh crap, I'm right. I was like, I didn't want to be right. I didn't want to be this right. But I'm right, and, there's more and more that I'm finding all the time. I have a nice little tab folder that has like all of my research in it that I'm looking at. Obviously, I'm not a scientist, which is also one of my favorite catchphrases. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. But I know enough to know that what I'm being told coincides. It matches up with my experiences and the experiences of the autistic people that I see in like groups and on my comments on my page. That was the most cathartic thing about my comic when I first started, was I'm angrily making these comics to explain my experiences, and the comments are all, oh my God, me too. And that's when it kind of hit like, oh, okay, we have this shared experience, became this big world where I'm like, okay, these are our shared experiences. So when I make comics, I pull from those shared experiences to say, this is the autistic experience. I try very hard not to go, oh, it's a handful of people, that's a human thing, and then I'm going to make a comic about it. I try to make sure that like this matches up with who we are and what the autistic community thinks of it. Not to go off on several tangents, but yeah.
And that is really interesting what you said as well about that autistic people are less likely to necessarily have that discomfort per se, that we aren't quite the same as other people. We feel discomfort that we're not, I think it's fair to say for many of us that we don't feel, like you said, we feel like alien. Are we robots? You know, we feel discomfort, but not at the expense of the non-autistic.
Right.
Which is interesting, because what we would be arguing, and many of us sadly have lots of anecdotes of experience in this, is we do make other people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I want to give, so it's kind of, it's a little bit anecdotal. It's going to be anecdotal. It's about my life. I certainly feel that, so I recognized I was autistic when I was about 32, about 31, 32. Same thing, always knew I was different. I'd had lots of really negative words and phrases consistently used to describe me, which was weird, cold, standoffish, unapproachable, intimidating, all these kinds of things, which didn't sit well with me. I was kind of like, I don't connect with those words. And what I have recognized, and I, you know, like you mentioned yourself, I really struggled to make friends, unless that, looking back now, they were neurodivergent themselves, you know, struggle to make friends, struggle to have adults when you're a young person like you, knowing that they are potentially either uncomfortable around you or they just don't get you and things like that. And that's a really difficult place to be as well. It's one thing, peers, you're not always going to get on with your peers. There are going to be mean other children who just don't like you or bully you, etc. But when it's also adults, when you're going to the workplace and I was getting disciplined for things that just didn't make sense. Like I was being disciplined because I didn't say good morning to everybody as I walked through a store. So I worked in a store, you know, these sorts of things. And I didn't understand. I was like, well, why would I say hello to everybody? I don't know all of these people. And that's a lot of energy. And, you know, so all this kind of stuff. But what I've recognized is people are much more accepting of me as a very openly autistic person who looks different as well. I've shaved my head because of my sensory differences. I stim very openly. Again, I want to be clear that I am capable to do this as a white woman in the UK, right? So it's not always that safe for many people to be unmasked. And also not being masked can also mean that you're vulnerable and things. There's a lot of things that go into this. But yeah, so I can be my weird, openly autistic, stimmy self, not even going to pretend I'm making eye contact. I'm looking up there, I'm closing my eyes. When I was delivering training the other day, actually I was delivering a lecture to a different university. I have my shoes off. I am stepping back and forth in this weird little box thing that I do because I'm excited that I'm out with human beings and I'm teaching them about stuff that I'm excited about. I make people less uncomfortable by being clearly different than when I tried so hard and unconsciously to be like other people. So I'm very on board with how for years I was stuck in the uncanny valley.
100%. You know, it's really funny. I don't think people realize the implications, and you're actually talking about a lot of them. The implications of being in the uncanny valley. I mean, when I think about the jobs that I did not get, the interviews that I did not get, the times that I was pulled over and it turned into something it did not need to turn into when it came to, you know, just terroristic kind of stuff, unfortunately, with some of these officers. You think about, career, you think about friendships, you think about all of these things. I, in school one time, was cheated off of by a German foreign exchange student. And it was a two-part assignment. One was write the definitions from the book. And I said, yeah, you can work with me. We'll write the definitions together. But when you do the sentences, which is the second part, write a sentence using that word. It's like you have to use a separate one. And so he was like, okay, yeah, sure. So he starts writing, I start writing, we turn the papers in. The next day, I'm in trouble. Of the two of us, him who barely speaks English, and me who is like, fluent, writing flowery words for no reason because I'm that kid. And they believed him over me. And I remember thinking, this doesn't actually make any sense. Like what you're saying doesn't make sense. Why would I be that person? Of the two of us, and I kept trying to explain to him, like, can you just tell, you didn't understand? And of course that didn't play out. But I mean, it has affected my career. It has affected my life when it comes to friendships, family relationships. There's people who to this day will treat me like this social pariah, like, oh, don't mind him, kind of thing. But I mean, I think that's what's so important about this project is people don't know. They don't know, what the Uncanny Valley is. And even if they do, I told a coworker of mine about this project and my theory. And they were like, well, that's just for robots. And I said, what is the number one comment that you think autistic people receive from people who experience us? You're so robotic. Why are you so robotic? There's so many connections to this, the correlation where you're just like, you're saying it, like you're saying the thing you're telling me right now that it's not happening. It's sort of like when I did that comic where I say, I don't know what it is, but sometimes people just look at me and they won't believe a word I say. And they say, that doesn't happen. I don't believe that. And I'm like, you just did the thing that I just said happens while you're telling me that it doesn't. So, but yeah.
I am quite interested and excited about this because one of my notes that I made for myself, which is basically what we're talking about, what can we take from the knowledge about the Uncanny Valley and how it does feel like it's applying to us as autistic people. I've got some thoughts around this. I don't know, obviously, if you've got any further thoughts. You have got thoughts because you're making a project around it.
Yeah.
It feels like you want people to have that knowledge. So yeah, what thoughts do you have around?
I think there's a two-part for this. I'm not making it just for autistics. It honestly, to me, has to be two halves of a whole. One, I'm making it to help autistic people understand what it is they're experiencing, that it is not just them. That's the number one problem autistics have, is they think this is my plight. This is just me. I'm alone in this. And then they find, especially this project or my post about this, and they're like, my mind is blown. This is my entire life. So for the autistics, I think it's important, this project, for letting them know they're not alone in this, that their experiences are extremely valid and very true, and they're going to correlate with other autistic people's experiences, especially those of us who mask or who pushed ourselves further into that. But the other half of this, in my opinion, is inoculating neurotypical people against this. They need to know that they're doing it. They need to, second guess this gut instinct that they're getting, because it is a gut instinct. It's an immediate response that they are not in control over. So they can't automatically not do it. They can't just decide one day to not do those things. So for me, it's sort of like, you have the autistic side. You have to let them know this is real, this is happening. You're valid. Your experiences are valid, because I think that's going to help a lot of people. But on the neurotypical side, it has to be, look at this. Look at what you're doing. Understand what you're doing, think about that person you're interviewing. Were they just quirky and weird and off-putting, or were you just picking up the wrong vibes? Were you subconsciously falling for this uncanny valley thing? Because I mean, I've been in interviews that lasted 5 minutes where they were just like, no, you know. And I had 6 years of experience in multimedia, ran the entire video department, rebuilt entire studios, had done all of this stuff, and I'd go into the interview and it was like, oh, I don't like this. Something's not right. But yeah.
And I don't think I've necessarily ever got a job from doing an interview until being incredibly openly autistic, going for jobs where they know I'm autistic, or actually that is almost what they're asking for, or directly asking for. Like a recent role that I have is because they know I'm autistic, and that was important to bring to the role. Actually, a couple of them. And being able to then be very, very obviously different, explaining, I will probably close my eyes during the interview because it helps me process better, and please don't interrupt sometimes if I'm taking long to answer. It's not, it's not me not knowing the answer or whatever, it's me taking time to process. So those kinds of things, even when we mask or attempt to mask, they're going to be picking up on those things. If they don't know you're autistic, if you don't know you're autistic, if you're in an interview and you're there doing what I will do, which is closing your eyes, which is taking time to process the answer, and then that person's like, oh, well, they don't know what they want to say, or they don't know how
they don't know the answer. Right.
They don't know the answer, or they sound like it's a script. Yeah, because it is. It's an autistic script, but not because we don't know the job and we don't know the answer. It's because we don't know how to socially interact with you, so we have practiced.
Right. There's a lot of back-end math we have to do before you get your answer. I just did a comic about this. I'm in a great position at a good company, but I do take interviews from time to time just to kind of, to practice for one. But what I've been doing is sort of like, if I'm not interested in the job and I take the interview, I'll actually put my growing up Autie in the resume, and I'll talk about being autistic during the interview. And I did a post about that recently, where it's sort of like, when I don't tell them, the uncanny valley thing takes over, and it's like red flags, I'm uncomfortable, something's wrong, danger, Will Robinson. And I'm like, okay, well, hold on, like, let me explain what's happening, because I can see it happening. Then I say, oh, I'm autistic. Here's what that, why you're feeling the way you are. But then you end up kind of with them in their brain looking at you through their knowledge of autism, which is faulty by default. They assume that means I can't do the job. They assume that means I'm going to be extremely problematic, or it's going to be like an HR nightmare or something like that. So I'm still kind of tinkering with that to kind of see, because it's going to be different in America versus UK. It's going to be different male to female. It's going to be different depending on what race you are and things like that. But I think all of the autism research that's really funny to me is based on the experiences of neurotypical people of us, whether it be towards, oh, we got to find a cause, we got to find a cure. Okay, why don't you tell me why I can't sleep through the night? Why don't you tell me why I can't get a job despite being overly qualified for the jobs I'm applying for? Like, if the research kind of went towards the direction we want it to, you can actually help us instead of focusing on the side that you're focusing on, which is not helping anybody at all. It is making you a lot of money. I totally get that, but switch it over.
It is a disconnect between non-autistic autism researchers who just want to work out why we exist as autistic people versus autistic people and their families and people that care about them wanting to, like, say, help us with our mental health, get therapy and appropriate services to actually understand how to support us in a way that actually suits autistic people. And I think, this uncanny valley, I feel like there's a number of things here that are connected, and I'm sure you've made these connections. It sounds like you've done a lot of background research into this, but I can see how all of this ties into Damien Milton's double empathy problem, how this ties into, we do, you know, this is very new knowledge, and I talk about it often, but Rachel Cullen's pragmatic language hypothesis, which I think underpins the double empathy problem. So like, we know the double empathy problem is happening. We've got research that demonstrates that. And then Rachel Cullen, who's doing their PhD now on their pragmatic language hypothesis, is talking about how our communication is pragmatically different to non-autistic people. So I feel like that might be also playing into potentially the uncanny valley, because we're using the right words and we're trying very hard to understand you neurotypical people, but there's a slight disconnect. And, you know, we know, like I say, because the research, that thin slice judgments, we are negatively judged very, very quickly, and that the double empathy problem is happening. You know, when you have an autistic and a non-autistic partner in an activity in research, they don't know each other's status, they don't know who's autistic and who's not, the communication breaks down. Whereas if you've got autistic and autistic, non-autistic and non-autistic, the communication doesn't break down. So I'm feeling like, oh, there's so many things here that are connected. There's going to be a stereotype, spotting patterns.
You know, well, that's the thing, is when he originally coined the term for this theory, it was just human likeness. That's all he was considering. That's all he was thinking about. But the further research on the uncanny valley has got us to a point to where it is word choice. It is voice intonation. It is eye contact. It is mannerisms. It is facial expressions. It is cadence. It is all of these little things that make neurotypical people neurotypical and sets us apart from them. So yeah, it is all connected, and that's kind of what I found out on all this research, and that what makes me really excited about this project. It's half terrifying and half exciting, because I'm like, again, I'm right. Oh God, I'm right. Why am I right? And now I just have to make the thing. So
that's always the thing. It's in our minds, isn't it? We do a lot in our heads, and then we have to do the thing. And I literally have another giant hood that says no things, only stuff and snackos, like games and snackos. I don't want to do the things. So I'm interested and excited about this because, again, I'm a social psychologist or a community psychologist. I'm interested in the practical application. I'm not a researcher who's interested in knowledge for knowledge's sake. And it sounds like neither are like you. You want there to be some sort of practical outcome for autistic people. And like you say, the interaction partner who's not autistic.
Right.
So I feel like, yeah, with the uncanny valley, it's because it's related to us masking, and when we mask quite well, in quotation marks, meaning we do a pretty good job that we're not picked up as autistic, but we're still picked up as weird because we're in that uncanny valley where there's something off, but they can't quite work out, those neurotypical people can't quite work out what it is. So there's a lot, isn't there, to do with masking. And so, yeah, the practical applications, I think, is, yeah, people learning if they know they're autistic or they know that they're different and they know that they are potentially not necessarily, they might not use the word masked, but then about learning our profile and our needs so that we can be more of our weird autistic selves. I don't do that to make non-autistic people less uncomfortable. I do that for myself because it helps my profile. But in doing that, in safely for me, unmasking in a number of ways because I've learned what I need and what my profile is and things like that, so I can assert boundaries. Like I don't shake hands. Somebody tried to shake hands with me the other day. I was like, I don't shake hands, have an awkward wave. By being my weird self, it's got that sort of added benefit, if you like, that non-autistic people are less likely to be a problem for me and see me as a problem for them. I don't know where I was going with that. I'm excited by the applications. That's my thing. It's always like the practical things. But again, I think what you highlighted was it's all well and good for a number of us to learn our profiles, demask, learn about the uncanny valley, go into those interviews, like you said, or whatever it might be, go into any setting any interaction with a non-autistic person, the other part of that equation is, okay, but they're not going to know what to be autistic means. They've got the stereotype. They're not necessarily going to, they're still not necessarily going to approach you in an appropriate way. It feels like a bit at this point in time, like damned if you do, damned if you don't.
It is. And I mean, that's something I'm going to cover in it. I'll say the last thing, since we're coming close to time, is when you mask, it is like running Windows on a Mac, or you're running Mac on, on a Windows. The mask is only as good as the thing running it. And if you're spending all of your energy masking, something's going to give, and it's going to give you away. And that's when, even if you're doing it perfectly, you can pull away from that back into the Uncanny Valley. Because I did an interview that lasted 30 plus minutes. And we were having a great time, and everything was going great. And then my mask froze, and I froze up for a split second, and he instantly was like, no. And that's when I got the super awesome question. So everything on this resume is real, right? We wouldn't want to look into this and embarrass you. And I was like, I'm sorry, is that a legitimate interview question? Oh yeah, we ask everybody that. No, you don't. But that's the thing about masking is, like you said, you close your eyes in interviews and you do different things as an autistic person to regulate yourself. Well, if you're masking and you can't do those things, something's going to come through that mask to show them that you are not neurotypical. And I think that's part of the problem, is like you said, if you mask, you end up in the Uncanny Valley. And if you don't, you end up with the issues of their knowledge of what autism is, and what their predetermined limitations are based on their knowledge. So,
yeah. And I guess, again, if people are safe to unmask, at least you're conserving some of your spoons. If you're not going to get that interview anyway, if you're not going to get that friendship anyway by being stuck in the Uncanny Valley or being your openly autistic self, then I would say go for your openly autistic self if you're safe to do so.
right.
Again, recognizing for many people in our community, that's not necessarily safe to do at all.
Right.
So actually, yeah, I would see that as more of at least you can serve some spoons.
Yeah.
And we don't want to be stuck in positions, jobs, friendships, education, whatever it might be, where it's not good for us anyway. So
you have to be on all the time.
We need to change. Aucademy, we are trying. I know lots of us are trying, to get that information out there and make some change in different places, but it takes time. But I'm very excited about this. I do like this topic has been, I was really looking forward to this when it came up. Like I say, for two reasons. I was like, oh, growing up Autie, fantastic. And the Uncanny Valley, good. I get to talk about that. So any final thoughts on the Uncanny Valley before our final question?
I will say that if you believe in this project, that go ahead and check out the GoFundMe. We're probably about a third of the way there. The amount that I asked for is a base level, get the thing done, get as much as I can into it. But if we did go higher than that, I would definitely be happy to expand upon it and add more to it. Maybe even get some other autistic creators in there for music and things like that as well.
Fantastic. I'm going to see if I can quickly grab actually your GoFundMe. Here it is. Lovely. And it's a nice short one. That always helps for our banners. It's a nice short one. Or faster funding at Ko-fi, literally growing up Autie. So IE at the end for Autie. So there's the GoFundMe. I think is that a 0? 0 ACDEC40, I think.
I believe so.
Yeah, or your Ko-fi, growing up Autie. Fantastic. I can't wait. And when it's out, can you let us know?
100%, yeah.
If that takes time, obviously that's absolutely fine. We're not going anywhere. And so to our final question that we like to ask everybody, what is your current or newest Stim?
I have so many. I did a children's book about losing many of my stems to bullying. I kept running out of them and different things like that. But there's one, and it's so funny that I just talked about how I listened to the autistic community about what to make comics about, what to make writings on. But there was a post that I saw where somebody talked about my current stem, which is it's subconscious. It's not something you can actually control. But basically what it is you get this overwhelming sense, kind of like in the back of your spine, kind of like right below where your neck is. And then it makes you jolt. And it just kind of goes in all directions. And that was actually at the end of my children's book. That was the stem that I got back. And so I'll be driving, or I'll be at work, or I'll be doing whatever, and I'll feel it kind of like take seed. And then, it just kind of goes everywhere. And it's pretty awesome.
Is that one that you could consciously manipulate? I know, is that slightly like ASMR? So if you get the right ASMR meridian response.
Yeah, I've done it subconsciously. I have some YouTube sounds. Blow dryer, for one, is one that I use, or I'll actually use a blow dryer because it's a combination of like the warmth, the vibration, the sound. And so that'll, I can basically do the goosebumps thing and have that. If I focus on that and get into that place, I can make it happen. But as far as like rapid fire, just randomly doing it, it's just not going to happen.
No, and that's fine. But yeah, it's interesting. This is why I like this. Everyone's got such different things. Sometimes you hear the same things, but even if somebody has a similar stim, they're always slightly different. So I talk about being a finger tapper, and then I ask if somebody else is a finger tapper. I'm like, oh, exciting. How do you do yours? Are you a double tapper at the ends because you're going back again, or is it a single tap? Which I love. And I'm going to ask this one for Ben. What is your favorite form of potato?
My options are very limited because I'm technically allergic to plants.
Oh, no. Okay.
In general. But I can
remember this from one of your posts. Sorry.
Yeah, I can eat cooked potatoes without the peel. So I think it's a toss-up probably between mashed potatoes and French fries.
Can I ask, because I know you've posted about that before, and it is interesting. So you have an allergy to most vegetables, is that?
Basically, I'm allergic to plants in general. So fruit, vegetable, nuts, grains, seeds, and even the potted plants outside, or the plants in the forest. I literally am, for some reason, just allergic. The differences between what they do to me is based on their family tree and where they come from and things like that. So I actually have a busted lip. I don't know what side it is right now. I think it's this one. And that's just from eating something that I'm not supposed to, whether it had like parsley or seasonings or something on it. So there's some things I can safely eat with a little bit of babying from medication, but then there's some things that would literally try and take me out, like zucchini or squash or any of the gourd family or things like that. So yeah, when it comes to what I can eat from the plants, it's basically starches. So white bleached flour, white rice, and then basically peeled white potatoes in whatever form they're in. So if the French fries have skins on them, I have to sit there and pull this stuff off and all that.
That might make Ben happy that you don't necessarily eat potato often, because Ben, I don't know if you're aware, has often used a potato filter to be on screen, and his page Autisticality, he is a potato. So that's why we asked that question, just because he's a potato. And thank you actually for sharing that as well, because I think that's also something quite important that lots of autistic people might not even be aware that they have intolerances, because we are more likely to experience allergies and intolerances. And that's a nice flag that I can make for, or signposting for, two of the sessions we did with Melissa Hauser. Melanie Hauser. Oh no, Melissa Hauser? Dr. Hauser,
Mm.
who discussed why we're more likely to have all the things, and that's one of the big buckets of things that we're likely to experience, which is intolerances to certain things.
Yeah,
Lovely.
autoimmune disorders as well.
Exactly, yeah. And yeah, so if anyone's interested, if you want to know why you have all the things as an autistic person, that video is really good. I can't believe I can't remember people's names. It's terrible today. My brain is obviously not braining, so I'm just going to quickly grab that just in case anyone wanted it.
Yeah, mine's not either.
Mel Hauser. I was right. It was Mel Hauser, not yeah. So thank you ever so much, Nathan. I really, like I say, I really enjoyed this topic. And thank you, everyone, Aucademy, and we will see you when we see you next. I don't know what our next session is, so just awkward wave, Nathan, until we find the right button to end the recording. Fantastic. Ben, help.